Hello, hi everybody. White Gaisukusquite Kafineskis, welcome. Yeah, sweet. I'm really glad you're here. Thank you for joining us. We've got a couple of hundred people and it's falling down that waterfall of no people joining. We're really grateful for each and every one of you. Because we try and jam pack. Oh, someone's found the reactions button. I love it. I know we wanted to do workshops, but like over 3,000 people keep signing up for every week. And so yeah, I know it's legit. And so we can't fit you all in a meeting. The servers crash, everything goes wrong. And so we do have to, unfortunately, not see your beautiful smiling faces, but you can clap, you can throw hearts out, and that actually lets the presenters know that you're with us. So thank you so much for joining. 430 and climbing. Love it. Okay, I'm Jade Burrell. I'm the Director of Learning at the Outdoor Learning Store. Joining you from traditional unceded territory this next people of the bull trout. And whilst I haven't seen a bull trout, the salmon are running, the kokanee are out. I'm very restrictive of my dog and not letting him swim anymore so that they can happily spawn in the river. So that's my my moment of acknowledgement and gratitude for that really particular moment that's happening in time and how special it is. Steph's here with me today.
Hello. Yeah, I'm Steph. I'm the program manager at Take Me Outside. It's great to be here with everybody. I'm calling in from Vancouver Island in British Columbia, Canada, and it's the unceded territory of the Coatsan people. And in a Hokominum word that I just learned today is Huit Seleno, which means October. Well, it's October. It's the time when the leaves fall from the trees. So it's lovely to have you all here as that month begins. And I'm going to be mostly in the background in the chat and helping things out. So I will pass it back to Jade for now.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here. And so nice to hear new language and learn new words. And what a beautiful transitional time of year for learning and growing. And that's why we're all here. So it's really fantastic. I'm just going to share my screen with you for a second. For some reason it went to the back. Oh my goodness, you're going to see all the wonderful things in reverse, and now they will come forth. So today is October 3rd. It is outdoor learning through patterns in nature, and you are in for a treat. Okay, as we lead, we just had the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, September 30th, and as we lead up to National Indigenous Peoples Day on October 8th, for us, truth and reconciliation work, when we're learning with the land, when we're learning outdoors, is integral to the work we're doing. We have a 4 seasons of Indigenous learning course. It's your last choice to sign up. We start in October, we run until May. 10 online modules and 10 beautiful diverse Indigenous elders, knowledge keepers or speakers, including Dr. Robin Moore-Kimmerer, to share with us. So please join us if you can. We're also running a 3-hour virtual online professional development gathering on October 20th. Again, early bird closes any minute. Links will go in the chat in a minute. It's with classrooms to communities. And we have 3 beautiful Indigenous panels, an Indigenous opening closing, and then you get to go out on the land with activities to take. So that's October 20th. We've got play-based learning, 4-part outdoor learning course. We've got nature activities through the seasons with Jacob Rodenberg. We've got in spring Rachel Tidd doing wild learning with her math and literacy curricula. So if you're interested in learning more, we're trying to give you those opportunities, and we're really excited to have you join us if that serves you well. Passing over to Steph, because it's Take Me Outside Day coming up, everybody. Don't miss out.
Yeah, and this is a perfect workshop to actually get ready for it, because we're doing a special nature art activity on actual Take Me Outside Day this year, which is Wednesday, October 18th. But we have the whole week full of speakers and activities and prizes. It's going to be super fun. We actually just released the poster of all of our speakers on Sunday, so you can check that out. I'll put the link in the chat in a minute. It's all free to sign up, and you can join in, whether you're a public school teacher or a homeschool educator or an interested parent or anything like that. We want you all there, and we'll encourage you to take your learning outside in whatever way that looks like for you.
Amazing. And I've been to the events. It's such an amazing community and all for free. So yeah, you can register at takemeoutside.ca/TMO day. Hey, look, we couldn't do this without like 80 partners now. We've got international partners supporting. And by the way, on our website, you can click on any of their logos. It'll take you to their site. Free resources, support, networking, it all exists there. We've got some fantastic partners in the US and more of them and even more. And lots of Canadian friends doing fantastic work in very specialist places or even more generally. So please, there's something for everybody there. Today we're introducing, it's the launch of the Patterns in Nature kit that these two fantastic humans, Janice and Megan, have curated. And it's very exciting. I'm going to let them talk about it more, but this is what we're celebrating today. And in order to do that, it's too early. I was meant to poll you. I always get excited and forget to poll people. So I'm going to do it. The first question is, where are you joining us from? Because I know people have been typing in the chat and I really appreciate that. And while you're answering that, I can let you know that Q&As will be answered as we can. And if you type any questions either in the Q&A or in the chat, Steph's going to grab them all and we'll pop them in and we'll ask as many as we can at the end. Please stay to the end because we've got prizes as always. 2 gift cards to the Outdoor Learning Store and 2 to the Take Me Outside store. The presentation will happen, then Q&A, then prizes. Those are the orders. Here you will get to access the recording, a certificate to your link of a link to access your certificate of attendance. There's a lot of words. Will be emailed to you by tomorrow lunch. If you don't get it, it's hopefully in your spam. And if you don't get it, then you can just hit reply to one of the reminders of the Zoom workshop and somebody will help you out with that right after. Okay, I'm going to close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to end that poll. I'm going to share the results. Oh my goodness, we're missing someone from Mexico, but everywhere else on this planet, not everywhere, but somewhere on this planet. I wonder if you can share in the chat where you're joining from. But we've got people from all across the States and Canada too. So fantastic. And I have one more question for you. Who are you in an educational sense? We believe that everybody's an educator in some way, shape or form. And some of these can fit into a bracket and some people are not what they would call themselves an educator, but are just passionate about learning outside. And each and every one of you is welcome. I'm going to give you just a few seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to end that poll and share the results with you here. So look, every category that we could think of or fit into 10 boxes, which is the maximum, exist here. And so this just goes to show me how much passion there is for outdoor learning across the board. And we are very grateful that you're here learning with us. And now we can get on to the really fantastic bit. So I'm going to welcome our presenters today. Janice will be taking the floor mostly. And Janice Novakowski is a district teacher consultant in the Richmond School District, that's in BC, where she learns alongside pre-K to 12, grade 12 educators and students in the areas of mathematics and numeracy. She's also an adjunct professor at UBC, the University of British Columbia, where she teaches elementary mathematics education courses. Some of Janice's fondest childhood experience centre on the outdoors, carefully turning over rocks on beaches to find little crabs. That I had that too. Log jumping and hiking through moss and fern-filled forests. What a picture to paint. And I'm really excited to see how you paint pictures with patterns and art, and that math is not all just numbers. Okay. And if you haven't met Megan Zeni, I don't know how. This incredible legend in the world is an experienced elementary school teacher, you know, to put it lightly, and a master gardener. Megan reimagined the prep position in her school, and made it the dream job, and spent her entire time outside with children in the garden classroom. This year, she's doing a new role as the early learning in K-7 curriculum teacher consultant with the same school district, and is also a PhD candidate at UBC in curriculum and pedagogy. And Megan's going to be in the chat, being your in-store guru, answering anything that she can as we go. So utilize that space, and we are so excited to have you both here sharing. Thank you so much. I'll pass it over to you, Janice.
Wonderful. Welcome, everyone. It is an honor to be here. I'm just going to share my screen and get everything started. I am joining you this afternoon from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded lands and waters of the Hunkaminam speaking people. And it is important to me as an act towards truth and reconciliation that I find ways to learn from the land and connect to the land and gain Indigenous knowledge from those who hold it, and share it with others when allowed to do so. And the image I have up on the screen here is a very common tree species in our part of the world. Megan and I live very close together, where the river in the Hunkaminam language is called Stalo, meets the Salish Sea, or also called the Pacific Ocean. This species is named the Douglas fir after a Scottish botanist who came during many hundreds of years ago and took seeds back to Scotland, and it was named after him. And I think, as Juliet Robertson says, we need to think about decolonizing how we name species in the world. So just tossing that out there as an aside. This is the Douglas fir cone, and there are local Indigenous stories around ways children can remember identifying species as one way to connect to the land. And the story goes, and this is a public story that is shared publicly, that there was either a tremendous flood or a tremendous forest fire, and the mice were scurrying around looking for safety and a place to rest. And they went to several trees who said, "Oh no, you can't climb up our tree. You can't share this space." And finally they came across the fir, and the fir said, "Oh, of course, climb on up." So they scampered up and they hid and rested inside the fir cones. And if you look closely, you can see the little tail and the two hind legs of the mice sticking out in the seeds. And so connecting to the land through stories and ways to identify species that will be memorable for students, are meaningful, and are connected to Indigenous knowledge is something that I've made part of my practice for a very long time. Also with cones, children, look at cones at different times of the year. So right now it's relatively dry, so a lot of the cones are open, but it's going to get cold and wet and they're going to close up. And you can see different patterns in the cones depending on the time of the year and whether they still have seeds in them or they just have their bracts closed up, and the diagonal and spiral patterns that you can see in those. So we're going to talk a little bit today about where we can see patterns in the world, and then the patterns that are maybe in our mathematics curriculum, how we can take that learning outdoors as well. So Megan and I are co-hosting this. Megan's hopefully responding to some questions and comments in the chat, and will pass those on to me and can weave in some of those things during this session. Both of us can be contacted in lots of different ways through email and different socials. We also both maintain websites, and all that information is there for you on the screen, and I'll share it again at the end as well. So the Patterns in Nature kit that we developed over the summer includes 6 key picture books, and then instructional ideas and math notes with those. An amazing educator resource book. If you don't know this book by Philip Ball, it's a big hardcover book called Patterns in Nature, and it's just full of amazing images that you can share with your students for inspiration and learn about some of those different types of patterns that we see in the world around us. There's the Educator Instructional Guide that gives you lesson and instructional ideas. A new material called 21st Century Pattern Blocks. You might be familiar with regular pattern blocks and have those in your learning space. These are in addition and sort of expand the use of those. There's also field guides. I don't know if I have one to grab here, but laminated, those plasticized field guides, so you can take them outdoors in all sorts of weather, and thinking about how we use patterns and mathematics to help us identify species, whether it's shape or size or patterns. There's a bag to collect some of your things in the kit, as well as different sorting tools. And sorting is sort of one of those precursor competencies or skills before we develop patterning. So, comparing and identifying different attributes. And so there's sorting hoops, embroidery hoops, bamboo, so they can go outside. There's plastic sorting mats. And then there's also a wooden box with a cover so that you can sort materials in different ways and move it around outside as well. If you have some of those materials as well, you can also just buy the kit as a text set. So it has the hardcover teacher resource and then the children's picture books as well. The 6 picture books that are featured, 2 of them are by Canadian authors. Happy to say the bottom 2 left ones, and the top left one is by a Canadian publisher. That one is also Flow, Spin, Grow, also available en français, which is lovely. For each of the books, there's some lesson sparks, so ideas to sort of extend the book. Sometimes it refers to specific pages, sometimes it's using the book in general. There's math notes that go with each book, so sort of a mathematical lens that explains what's happening in the pictures or the text of the book a little bit more to support you as an educator or a childcare provider or as a parent. And then there's the book in the middle there, that Patterns in Nature book. That is the key sort of educator resource that is in the kit. The book on the left, Messy Maths, we thought probably many of you might have that already. Juliet Robertson has an amazing section of ideas in her book on patterning, and so you might want to access that. If you don't have it, it is available through the Outdoor Learning Store, just as sort of as an add-on. And then just very recently published is James Brunt's amazing book on land art, again full of beautiful images. He's a UK land artist from the United Kingdom. Beautiful images to inspire your students to create land art outside, so you can also follow him on socials. So when I think about outdoor learning and math, and I've been teaching for well over 30 years and raised my 2 sons, spending lots of time outdoors, really think about 2 different perspectives. And it's that one where we can take typical classroom learning outdoors and have some of those experiences outdoors, whether it's counting collections or doing which one doesn't belong or measuring things. And we might use outdoor materials that we find outdoors, take some of the tools from indoors, outdoors. So there's that perspective. We know that that's still really important. Getting kids outside is always great and always good in so many different ways. The other lens or the other perspective is being inspired by the outdoors to inform our mathematical thinking, to be able to make questions, engage in mathematical inquiry, and really thinking about what math lives here in this place and in this space. What math story does this place tell? Where can we find math? How can we mathematize and think about the world around us through a mathematical lens? And how does it help us think and make connections about things in new ways and maybe understand ourselves and our place, our community and culture, and the world around us in a new way? So we're going to share ideas from both perspectives in this session. But I'm going to spend a little bit of time also doing a little bit of a quick math overview to help sort of situate some of the tasks that we're going to share. 5 key outdoor learning practices that I use a lot in my own teaching practice. And if you attended Rachel's session, her webinar last week, she talked about math walks. We're going to talk about pattern walks this week. Looking closely, there's a Looking Closely kit and resources in the Outdoor Learning Store. We're going to treasure hunts outside, or scavenger hunts, or explorations, investigations, whatever you'd like to call them. The use of field guides, as I mentioned already, as a way to see how math and science intersect and how biologists and botanists use mathematics to identify species, and then using studio practices outdoors. And so I'm fortunate to teach in a studio space where we explore mathematics through different materials. And I've been thinking a lot about how do we do that outside as well. So I'm going to share some of those ideas today. So just to do a quick little overview of mathematical patterning, and we have people from all over the place. Canada is pretty consistent in introducing repeating patterns in pre-K through kindergarten, grade 1 and grade 2, and then moving to increasing and decreasing patterns. In the United States, Common Core looks a little bit different. So you'll sort of have to think about your context and your curricular sort of standards or outcomes. But there also is developmental research. And the developmental research does say that repeating patterning skills are really essential for further mathematics success and development, and are a key indicator of that. And that children need to see a repeating pattern like yellow, red, yellow, red, yellow, red, at least 3 times. So that sort of pattern unit or core repeats 3 times for them to understand that there's a pattern. And sometimes at the beginning, it's just very intuitive. And then they start to understand that there's a part that repeats over and over again. The big ideas around that, it's not just being able to recite yellow, red, yellow, red, yellow, red. Just like counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 doesn't mean you know how to count. It means you know how to recite the number names. Like when you little ones say the alphabet, ABC, they don't really understand the alphabet. We actually need to help them understand what makes a pattern. And those two big concepts are regularities. So what happens here in a regular way over and over again? And then how we make generalizations. So what can we say about this? How can we generalize what the pattern rule is? And those are, I think as educators or parents, something to keep in mind when we think about patterns, that is the essence of what we're trying to help children think about. The developmental research shows that children generally go through this progression or trajectory of developing their understanding of patternings. And again, if you're curious about the research behind this or want to know a little bit more, there's developmental psychology behind this and research, and you can go to learningtrajectories.org, and they share all the research and those sort of developmental stages available there. So beginning with, again, that sort of intuitive patterning, being able to recognize patterns, and then being able to create your own patterns, whether it's extending one that's already been started for you or creating your own. And then there's the next one is the big jump to being able to translate patterns into different modes and being able to recognize what the pattern unit is. Now, depending what curriculum or resources that you're using, here on the screen, I've got this repeating pattern here, and we're labeling it, and this is sort of standard labeling, AAB, AAB, and again, 3 times to show repetition. The core is the part that repeats over and over again. Sometimes that's called a stem, sometimes it's called a pattern unit. So there's all different, different resources share different things. They all mean the same thing, is that unit that repeats over and over again. This pattern core has 3 elements. So A, A, B. There's 3 parts or elements to it. 2 are the same. They're both A's, the triangles. A child that can translate might say triangle, triangle, rectangle, triangle, triangle, rectangle, but they also recognize that you could label this as AAB, or 1, 1, 2, or clap, clap, snap, that they're flexible and can go in between the different ways that you're reading or translating or labeling a pattern. And then there's the next big jump is to being able to play with numbers as patterns. So counting by 2s or 5s, or starting at 32 and counting by 4s, starting from there and backwards, and being flexible and fluent, using number lines and 100 charts to help you with that. And then connecting to geometry, like doubling patterns like this one here, where we're representing it visually, and they might create with blocks, tripling, etc. And then moving to algebraic thinking and really looking at what the pattern rule or expression is for patterns like this, where we start again concretely or visually, and then make that connection to the algebra and the numerical representation. So as children are beginning to learn about patterns here, and you can see those bottom green blocks, they might say, oh, well, that's +2. You're adding 2 more blocks each time. And they may say, well, one goes on the top and one goes on the side. And that's where the visual or the concrete materials really help that understanding. And then students begin to see, or children begin to see that, well, there's this part actually stays the same, and we're adding 2 more at each sort of like layer. And then students are able to generalize the pattern expression as being 2n minus 1. And that generally happens around grade 6 or grade 7. And so that's sort of and then that continues on to high school, where they tend to not use as many visuals or concrete materials, but they should, because that helps understand these concepts and the connection between the symbols and the visuals. All right, so again, that was a very quick math overview, sort of a patterning 101, but I think it's really important for those of us that spend a lot of time with children engaged in emergent inquiry, and you want to be responsive to students' questions and be able to not give them the answers, but prompt them and provoke them and nudge them in new ways with their learning and move them forward with their learning. So I think it's important to understand the math so that we're able to do that if we're with a whole class or whether we're with a small group. So one of the supports that I think really helps students is, before we jump into patterning, is thinking about materials and their attributes. So really looking at, what does this leaf look like? Well, how could we describe it? And spending some time doing that and sorting materials by their attributes. I'm noticing that Karen has her hand up. I'm hoping someone can maybe respond to her question, or because it's come up a few times, or if Karen, you could put your comment in the chat and someone could respond to it there. Thanks. So young children tend to sort or pattern by color. And so again, we want to nudge them beyond thinking about patterning isn't just about color. It can be about size. It can be about shape. It can be about pattern or texture or species. So here on the bottom right, we had students sort leaves that they found on this school ground. And again, the sidewalk chalk came out by species. So we laid out one of each kind, and then children gathered more and piled them into each round. Sidewalk chalk is a great tool. You can also make your own sidewalk chalk so that you're not, adding any unnatural dyes to the environment. So I've made sidewalk chalk with cornstarch, and then adding things like turmeric or dried berries, powdered berries, or beets, or cinnamon. There's all sorts of different things that you can add to cornstarch, and you can make solid chalk that children can use. I use little paper cups as molds, and it's easy for their hands to grip. So that's just a total aside, but sidewalk chalk comes in really helpful for sorting. Again, the kit has lots of sorting mats as well, and sorting trays, and again, those embroidery rings that you can see here for sorting. So sorting is that first step to being able to pay attention to, like, what's going to be our A and our B and our C and our D, and how are they the same and how are they different? All those mathematical conversations we can have about materials. So here's an example of 3 materials that are all the same color. They're all brown. They come from 2 different plant species, and there's 3 different types. So there's cones, there's acorn caps, and there's acorns. And here's me just doing a quick video showing, again, once you have them sorted, it supports students in that regularity of patterning. So A, B, B, C, A, B, B, C, cone, acorn, acorn, cap, cone, acorn, acorn, cap. So that linear pattern is really usually the first step we make in patterning. Students like to make them really, really long, whether it's outdoors or indoors. And you think about what comes next. How do we extend the pattern? We can make it really playful by sometimes, as we're walking around, as children are making patterns, lifting one of the elements up and saying, oh, well, what's missing? What did I take? Or, taking out 2 parts and having them figure out, what's missing. And that can be really playful. And that also gives you a real sense as an educator, do they really understand what the pattern unit is, and can they instantly recognize what's missing? Another example, again, to nudge students' thinking so that they don't only think about patterns coming in a line or linearly, is to create patterns in different shapes. And here I just did a quick time lapse of, again, a circular pattern. You could ask them to do in triangles or rectangles or squares. You could ask them to create patterns in wavy lines or zigzag lines. You could just try different things to, again, disrupt that thinking, because we don't want students to get stuck about and sort of narrowing their thinking about what mathematics is. We want to continue to broaden their thinking about what mathematics is and how we can play with those ideas. Again, you can see here in this circle, we've got three repetitions. So that we know that it can, and in a circle, it can just kind of keep looping around too. So you can ask students where you can have starting places in different places. So maybe we start on the acorn cap. So now that's A. So then this is A, B, C, C. I have to think out here. A, B, C, C. So again, different ways to be playful, using the patterns that children have created, but using a different starting point, or removing something and asking what's missing, what comes next, what comes before, what comes between. All those sort of questions that you can ask to be playful with mathematical ideas. Now, here's the 21st century pattern blocks. And one of the reasons I decided to use these in the kit is because they're extremely well made. They're originally designed by Christopher Danielson, who you might know from his beautiful children's books, How Many and Which One Doesn't Belong. But they've been commercialized or made publicly commercially available by mathematician Dan Finkel from Seattle. And they use the standard these are pattern blocks that many of you will know, either in plastic or wooden form. These 21st century pattern blocks are all wooden. The paint really holds up really well outdoors. So we have our parallelogram, our equilateral triangle, our trapezoid, and our hexagon. Now, if you don't remember those names, that's okay. Children can call them the yellow one and the red one, and that's an access point as well. You can talk about the 6-sided one or the 4-sided one, or you can sort them in different ways to sort of play with this. But the new shapes that are added, this aqua one is called a kite. And then this purple one is called a convex hexagon, or a concave hexagon, excuse me, because this angle is concave, goes inwards, but it still has 6 sides. And then this is a right triangle because it has a right angle. And this is called a dart. So again, some children might be really curious about that. They might see that the dart has 4 sides. So that's a kind of quadrilateral. So similar to a parallelogram and a trapezoid, because they both have 4 sides, but the angles are different. So your older children, or children that are really interested in angles and shapes and mathematics, might be curious about that. So we just try to, introduce something that might be new and nudge children's mathematical thinking a little bit. So again, they can be used like you would use any math material that you might bring from your classroom outdoors, Unifix cubes or Cuisenaire rods, whatever it is that you have. So I've just got an AB repeating pattern here. And then here we've got a radiating pattern that starts with that central hexagon and radiates out. And we can read the repeating pattern here as kite, hexagon, kite, hexagon, kite, hexagon as it goes around. We can also look for lines of symmetry and think about how many lines of symmetry as a type of pattern and a type of mathematics within those radiating patterns. And then this is also called a tessellation, which we often see in nature when we think about wasp nests and beehives and sunflowers, the centers of sunflowers. Those are tessellations, the way those shapes are all fitting together without any spaces in between. But this is a geometric tessellation. So again, making connections there. And just again, another example of how you could, mix together natural loose parts that you find outside with the 21st century pattern blocks or another math material that you have access to. And then I use the 4 cones here as a structure, and some students might need that support. So that's just another tip, a suggestion. If some students are having troubles creating these concentric circles of patterns or radiating patterns, providing some structure and symmetry with 4 big pieces is a nice way to start there. And then again, we can look at lines of symmetry. We can read the different repeating patterns in different ways. So that's just an example of how to mix those 2 together. And then here's when we think about those increasing and decreasing patterns. This is an increasing pattern. And when I share things like this with students, the questions I ask are, what do you notice? What's happening here? What stays the same? What changes? What comes next? So what would be the 4th figure or term or step? There's different names, again, used in different curriculum and resources. How do you know? Like, again, justify your thinking around that. And what's the pattern rule? So children, might recognize, well, there's 1 here. So that's the first one. And on the second one, there's 2 in the bottom layer. On the third one, there's 3 on the bottom layer. So on the 4th one, there's going to be 4 on the bottom layer. And then they decrease as they go up. And these are triangular numbers. Some students might notice that they make the shape of triangles. So you can introduce that mathematical sort of idea of triangular numbers and square numbers and have students compare and play and create with those. You can see next here, again, just a collection of materials. And starting with my 4 points, I use triangular arrangements of my little rose hips here from my garden that I'll use to make tea with. Within my pattern here. So you can see those little triangular patterns. And again, once you've sort of provoked students with an idea like that, you'll see them embedding those in their the patterns that they create. So again, hopefully this is giving you some inspiration for some land art for Take Me Outside Day coming up soon. Again, if you're not familiar with visualpatterns.org, Fong Win is a middle school educator from California, and she's curated an amazing website of visual patterns, and they're all slides. They're just images that you could put up in a screen if you're teaching inside, but here's a way to take those outside. So they always share either the first 3 figures or 4 figures of a visual pattern. And I've just recreated one using some of the 21st century pattern blocks. And again, you might ask those questions, and I challenge you to think about this yourself. You might want to throw your ideas in the chat. What's happening here? What do you notice? What's staying the same? What's changing? What is the pattern rule? How would you describe it? Can you think of an algebraic expression that would explain or define what's happening here with this pattern? Just going to give you like 30 seconds. And Megan, let me know if there's anything coming up that you think I should respond to.
You're getting lots of great feedback on the videos, and people are really loving everything you're sharing. There was one request to slow down your speaking a little bit, but everybody, look at all these thumbs and hearts. You're like, it's amazing. Keep going.
Yeah, I'm a fast talker. Sorry,
okay. We all are.
You can always watch the recording and then change the speed on the recording.
And people can also turn closed captioning on if they want, is available as well.
Thank you. Great. Thank you. Okay, so again, algebra is one of my favorite areas of mathematics. What I do find is that many children think it's some whole different area of mathematics when they get to grade 6 or 7 that they've never heard of before. But actually, we start doing it in preschool and kindergarten. And this is one of the ways that we can really introduce algebraic concepts in a really playful, hands-on, fun way. And so when I look at this pattern, I know many children see that they see the 3. They see the 3 shapes there, and they think, okay, well, there's 3 there and there's 3 there. And they kind of hang on to that 3. And so what I have learned is that sometimes you need to, you let them struggle a little bit. You let them think about it, and then you might need to give them a little nudge. That's what I usually call it. It's like, okay, for those of you that would like a little hint or a little nudge, come and see me, or come and talk to me about this, because those that want to sort of persevere and work through it, you want to give them the opportunity to do that. But I might use frames, or I might use yarn that I have outside, or twine or twigs to box part of the visual pattern here, so students can see what is changing and what is staying the same. And drawing their attention to the arrays and the relationship between this one and this one and this one. And then noticing, oh, there's always this one extra one. In math, we call that a constant. This is the variable part. So this is the part that changes with each figure or with each step. And what is it doing? Well, there's 2, and then there's 4, and then there's 6. Oh, 2, 4, 6. The next one would be 8. That's just doubling each time, or multiplying by 2. And so students can start to make those connections connected to the visuals and the material. So at the bottom, I've just got some. Again, I've been doing this a long time, how I would anticipate many children might respond, what they might notice, what they might say if we were doing a gallery walk or having a little discussion about this in small groups. And again, there's a bit of a progression there in terms of our thinking, but they're all correct. They're all describing what they see, and we want to give children opportunities to describe what makes sense for them. And then you also want to make sure you're providing opportunities so that they hear from others, because again, that's what's going to help them make connections and consolidate their thinking, and also extend their thinking sometimes by hearing someone else's thinking or strategies. Another scaffold that I'll do sometimes, again, if a student's really having difficulties seeing the parts that are staying the same and the parts are changing, is I'll change the color. And so instead of changing it to a block, I just change the constant to an acorn. So again, just sort of little things that I've learned over the years that you can sort of do again when you're outside, and just pull on the materials that you have to support students to see these patterns and this algebraic thinking in a way that will hopefully make sense to them. So that's our little algebra piece there. And so that's sort of the taking the classroom learning and those curriculum standards that we have, and the types of experiences we often do on a screen or on an app or with math manipulatives on tables or on the carpet in the classroom, and the types of tasks that we can do outside. But I'd also like to share some of those other practices that I use in my outdoor learning practice with teachers and with students. And one of them is math walks. And again, Rachel talked about math walks last week. And this is an example. This happens on the left side here is a grade 4 or 5 class from one of our local schools. And again, we walked down to the harbor along the river, and the students knew we were going on a math walk. And I always, once we get to wherever location we're going, of course, we're noticing things along the way. But then I also sit down with them, or we stand in a circle, and we really situate ourselves to the story of the land and the water that is around us. And so on the dock here, I was sharing some of the knowledge that I had been shared with me about how this territory that these children go to school on was shared territory amongst many groups of Indigenous peoples for time immemorial. And the waterways and the fishing and the harvesting areas and the summer settlement areas and, their lands were used over time. And then we asked children, what do you think it looked like 500 years ago? What do you think it looked like 100 years ago? What do we know has happened and what has changed over time? So building in that mathematical concept of elapsed time and timelines. And then I asked other questions about, what else do you wonder about this place in this space? And so questions came up about how the river flows and how fast it flows and currents. And there's lots of mathematics included in that. And then the depth of the river, the depth of the ocean, how long it takes for the fishermen to go out to find whatever species they're looking for. And then we talked a lot about tides. Tides came up and the rhythms and patterns involved with tides. And how that's connected to the patterns of the moon and the sun and daily cycles and patterns. And see, I'm getting all excited, but there's so many connections. It's not just about yellow, red, yellow, red. Again, it's like patterns are embedded in our world around us and help us to understand ourselves, our lives, our daily life, our culture, our community, the place that we live in. So having that discussion, and then you can see the students have iPads here and some of them have clipboards, and they took pictures of different things in this space. And then we went back to the class to sort of explore some of those mathematical questions that they had about the land and the environment and the waters and their community. On the right-hand side, a grade 1-2 class from the same school, we just took out 1 or 2 iPads and did a neighborhood walk. And we did a neighborhood walk several times. So one time it was just a math walk. Another time it was a shape walk. Another time it was a number walk. And this time, the documentation panel I have here was a pattern walk. And so children look for patterns. They had to explain before we took a picture, what is the pattern? How would you describe it? We took pictures and then we put them together in panels like this. And we had these panels in the classroom as well as in the foyer into the school where families come in, because we really also wanted to help expand families, parents, and grandparents' understanding of what math is and how it's connected to our daily lives. So those visual reminders in these little panels were an important part of that. Other practices include looking closely and sort of really slowing down and using either our eyes or our tools or our senses to look closely at different species and living things in the world around us, and then using field guides to support us with that. So patterns can be used to help us identify how different plants and trees grow, how their leaves or needles grow along their stem. And the 3 general ways sort of that botanists have agreed upon is that leaves grow in opposite ways up a stem, or they grow in alternating ways up a stem, or they grow in whorled ways, so around a stem up, so in a spiraling way. So again, that's often identified in a field guide. You'll see opposite leaves or alternating leaves or whorled needles. And that is a way to help you identify different species. And again, a connection to using mathematics as a way, to identify species and different plants and animals as well. So in your kit, in the Math and Patterns in Nature kit, there's some tree field guides, there's some insect field guide, then there's this bugs and slugs field guide as well. And so you can see here, there's a wasp in my backyard, but butterflies and lots of insects. This particular insect here has banding. This insect here has dot patterns and stripe patterns and symmetrical patterns on their wings. So again, those patterns can be used to identify particular species. All right, and then the idea of a treasure hunt, going outside and looking for particular types of patterns. So it might be find 10 different types of patterns, or you might be more specific and say, find a fractal, find a repeating pattern, find a growing pattern, find a tessellating pattern, find a symmetrical pattern. so sometimes like on the top right here, this was clearly a little rainy day, but on little pieces of paper, you know, I have students find this, find that. That wasn't specifically about patterns, but you could do that around patterns. And that was sort of a grade 3-4 class. And this bottom one was grade 2s and 3s. And so we just made these clipboards using cardboard from the recycling bin and then paper from the recycling bin as well, and using the back side of papers and cutting them in half. And then this child recorded the different types of patterns they found on their little pattern treasure hunt outside. And for those of you that may not be familiar with fractals, fractals are a very specific type of pattern. They often aren't introduced mathematically until secondary school, but young children begin to see them for sure. And this book here, again, Patterns in Nature, the teacher resource, educator resource book that comes with the kit, has a whole chapter on fractals. I'm just going to share a few images up in my little screen here, but you can see beautiful photographs that can inspire. There's the Romanesca broccoli, which is a fractal pattern. Some ferns are fractal patterns, the coastlines, how rivers flow, the veining on leaves, our lungs, all fractals. So fractals are a shape. It's called a self-similar shape that iterates, but it reduces or increases or decreases in size with each iteration. So we see fractals in snowflakes, we see fractals in tree branches, in tree roots. It's really neat when it's a clear day and you can see the shadows of the branches on the ground as well, because the children can run across them and trace them out with their feet, or if they're on concrete, you could outline them with chalk or yarn or twine, but lots of different ways to introduce that idea of fractals in different ways for young children. All right, I'm just looking at the time and just finishing up. So probably about 5 more minutes, and then we'll go over to some Q&A. And then taking those studio practices outdoors using found materials, again, those linear patterns, and then we've got a radiating pattern here, leaving them out for their classmates to go around, and you can do a bit of a gallery walk outside and have children read each other's patterns in different ways, using natural clay outdoors, again, so we're not adding any chemicals to the environment, as a way to capture the patterns on different leaves or twigs or bark. This student on the right here really liked those spiraling patterns on the bottom of the cone. You can see it's closed, so he used that to imprint into the clay to capture that pattern. And then other types of patterns, we've talked about so many, but spirals are another one that comes up, and there's lots of different kinds of spirals, but 2 of the main ones are Archimedean, which are equidistant, which means the length or the distance between the lines are all equal, and then logarithmic, they increase, the distance between increases. So when we see shells at the beach, or like the snail shell at the bottom right there, those are logarithmic spirals. So playing with some of these ideas and connecting them into our work of patterning. The Fibonacci sequence, one of the picture books included in the kit is called Growing Patterns, and it goes into this in detail, but many of you will remember this from your own education, but the next number is the sum of the 2 previous numbers. So 1 and 1 makes 2, 1 and 2 makes 3, 2 and 3 makes 5, etc. And it continues on and on. It is named after an Italian mathematician, Fibonacci. I do want to just say that mathematicians in India and China discovered this sequence hundreds of years before it was named for Fibonacci. But we all know that that's just kind of how the world works. And we need to work at unlearning some of that. So just want to acknowledge that. For those of you who are saying, okay, so Fibonacci numbers, yes, I've heard they're in nature, they're in pineapples, they're in cones, they're in sunflowers, but where are they exactly? So here's an example of an investigation here on the left. This was a grade 1-2 class, and we found different cones outside at the school park, and we had our tub of handy sidewalk chalk, and this student here just was tracing the spirals with the sidewalk chalk. And in the image, the little video in the middle here, I used some acorn ink that I had made with acorn caps. And I painted the bracts and how they spiraled out to show you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 spirals going counterclockwise from the stem of the pine cone. On most species of cones, you'll also get a clockwise set of spirals. So if I look at this, there's 1, 2, it's not painted that way, but it goes clockwise. 1 will be 8 and 1 will be 13. So where we see Fibonacci numbers in nature, they're usually the adjacent numbers. So 8 and 13, or 5 and 8, or 2 and 3 and 5, for example. When a cone is open up, you can also look at it from the top, and the little bracts that are coming up, there's 1, and then the next layer has 2, the next layer has 3, and this next layer has 5 coming off the stem. So again, those are Fibonacci numbers as well. So again, I get this question asked a lot of times, like, where's Fibonacci in pine cones? I really don't get it. That's where it is. So it's something you might want to explore with your students. And then also making local connections and to cultural practices and cultural species that are important to Indigenous communities in your particular context. So most of our children now know how to identify a cedar, a red cedar or yellow cedar. Here's one from my backyard and all the little cedar cones on there. And they know the importance of cedar to Coast Salish communities. It's called the tree of life. But they also know that cedar is used in many different ways. And one of those ways is in weaving. And so there's these cultural practices that also make a connection to plants and trees in the world around you. And it's not just in the design, like we see here in these mats, but also in the process of weaving. So patterning is such, embedded part of lots of cultural practices. All right, and now just finishing up with a couple minutes of examples of land art. Here's a spiral made by a group of students in Oliver, British Columbia, which is in the deserty interior area, our Okanagan area, and they were using shale that they found in their local environment. They didn't have a lot of other things, but you can see this is an equidistant spiral, and they used the leaves that they found to do the measuring. So thinking about how you might do some land art through specific concepts. So let's think about spirals, or let's think about pattern, or let's think about symmetry. And have students use found materials to create that different land art. Also thinking about what might happen when two math ideas meet. So what might happen when you think about patterns and shape in your land art, or numbers and pattern, and play with that. And then you can leave it as ephemeral art, on your school ground, and ask other classes and children or people that walk through that trail at that park to add to it. So Take Me Outside has lots of resources on Andy Goldsworthy on their website. He's probably the most well-known land artist, but there's so many land artists. Mayumi Nakabayashi is a Japanese land artist who now lives in Ireland, and you can follow, and all these socials are on here. Alison Tyler on the East Coast of North America, and James Brunt, who I've mentioned before, from the UK. But all of these images, again, can be used as inspiration for what patterns live here, what math lives here, what do you notice, what shapes do you see, what patterns do you see, to inspire students to create their own patterns outdoors. And these are called tree ladders or twig ladders that Alison creates in gaps and nooks. And so size and shape play a factor there. And then some of James Brunt's, he often does spirals and concentric circles with leaves and shells and pebbles that he finds in whatever spaces he's working in. And so again, here's those spirals from Oliver that were created with his grade 2-3 class, and then a little collage of their land art that they created. And then James Brunt again did the 100 leaves challenge a few years ago. And so we did this with a class of students in a school park at one of the schools that I work at. So they had to collect 100 leaves and sort of justify that they had 100. So they put them in piles of 10s or 25s. So lots of counting, like a big counting collection. And then they created their land art with their 100 leaves. And this is the time of year to do that for sure. And again, just a reminder of Take Me Outside Day coming up, and take a picture of the land art you create with the children in your care, and then send that off to Take Me Outside, and they'll include that in a mural. And so just as I leave you this afternoon, I just want to toss some inquiry questions your way, and maybe to provoke your thinking a little bit. What makes a pattern a pattern? What patterns can you see outdoors? What patterns can you create outdoors? What materials and tools help you think about patterns in new ways? And then where do patterns live in the world around you? Those rhythms and cycles in nature, seasons, daily cycles, the sun, the moon, tides, weather, life cycles, etc. So thank you for joining me this afternoon. I'll put Megan and my contact information up, and we've got some time for questions. Whew.
My goodness me. What an enormous amount of information. Thank you. Wow. And just so inspiring, so engaging, so I feel relevant, that could be used, just whatever you've got. Wow.
I was like, I'm just going to stay out of her way. I'm not getting involved in this one. I'm just
don't-
going to step back.
I don't even have words. I just like all of the ideas. I'm like, and people were like, yeah, it was fast. I'm like, yeah, there's a recording. And I love that. You can play things back slower if that works for you. It's a YouTube video when it gets loaded. So you can absolutely do that. And yeah, just watch it again, pick a bit, and any minute of it could be a whole lesson. So how wonderful. The gratitude is pouring into the chat.
I have a couple of things I want to jump in, Jade, just to say a lot of the questions that came up. Janice is incredibly generous with her knowledge and her wisdom. So engage with her on her platforms. I don't know, Janice, if you want to throw that up again so people can find you. People are asking about the recipe for the acorning, for example. Like if you go into Janice's Instagram or you go into her Twitter, you can engage with her there. And I know that she would be really happy to support your questions that you have. Everything, I would say almost everything you've talked about, I've seen you share out. And so certainly engage with Janice there in all of the places where you can find her there on Twitter, which is now X, but you can find her there and Instagram. She does a lot, and her websites, and get on her mailing lists and all of those things. So people can find Janice there. Before we go, the last comment I wanted to make too was to just thank the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council of Canada for their support, in putting this series of support together that we've been working on for these kits. So this is the third kit we've put together for the Outdoor Learning Store. You can also find the Looking Closely and the Soil Science kit available through the Outdoor Learning Store. But we are so grateful, Janice, for your time and your energy. And we're also thankful that we are supported by NSERC and the Faculty of Education at the University of British Columbia. Jade, was there anything you wanted to add? Any giveaways or things you want to do?
Yeah, we're going to do a couple of quizzes, but I just want to say, someone said, is there any way I can do patterns without having to spend a lot of money? Well, firstly, just watch this again, and that's like a whole year's worth of things. But secondly, we do have a funding page, outdoorlearningstore.com/funding. There are options through US affiliates of Environment Ed or provincial things in Canada. So we've got a whole list in there. So have a look. If you need support with funding, there are some options. But honestly, you answered all the questions, and I'm overwhelmed. I'm just like,
Let me say though, just choose one thing. Like I tossed a lot of things out there, right? Just choose one thing, make one step forward, choose one thing to try. That's all you need to do, right? And just,
and that's it. Maybe overwhelmed was not. I am in awe. I'm in awe of all of the things, but I literally have, I'm looking at it out the corner of my eye. I got a little pot of acorns, and I'm like, excellent. And so fantastic. So really just amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. We are going to just get outdoors, Lisa. Yes, you got it. Go out often, frequently, as much as you can, and it will reveal itself. Okay, we've got 2 minutes to do quizzes. Here we go. And you can leave if you need to leave. I recognize you've got babies and lives and all those things. Deepest gratitude. Knowledge is incredible and so helpful, especially for people like me. I was saying before we went live that math is not natural to me. I'm a words gal. I find it really difficult. Those pattern things, the way you were doing that, I wish I'd had that. And now I do, and I can share it. So that's fantastic. Okay, 4 questions, everybody. It is a typing competition. I'm sorry. We're trying to get you to engage and have a real look at what we've got available. So open up outdoorlearningstore.com and takemeoutside.ca and get ready to type. 4 questions. First one will get you a $25 gift card to the Outdoor Learning Store. It's either in Canadian or US dollars. Here we go. Again, open the outdoorlearningstore.com. What date does registration close for our 4 Seasons of Indigenous Learning course? Oh, people know.
That's great.
Mhm.
The people know. And if you don't know, I'll tell you the answer, because Kelsey Begg, you were the first one on that right answer with October 15th. So congrats, Kelsey. Let us know. You can message host and panelists and let us know your email. And for the first 2, whether it would be in Canadian dollars or US dollars.
Fantastic. Okay, other places that you can get free professional development through the Outdoor Learning Store is our podcast. Which organization do we feature in our most recent Earthy Chats podcast? Drum roll. I really want to have dramatic music in the background. I'm always like too quick.
It might be a bit
Ooh.
overwhelming. Maybe just
Yeah,
be
that's
overwhelming for
true.
me.
Yeah. I see it.
Katie Vincent, good job. So Earth Rangers, one of our amazing partners in the most recent Earthy Chats podcast. It's a
And they've
great
got some
podcast. Sorry.
Oh, no, but they've got Earth Rangers have got some amazing resources on climate change and anxiety, some resources to support parents or educators in how to talk to kids about climate change, anxiety and stuff. So dive in. Okay, those are the Outdoor Learning Store gift cards. Well done to those. Sorry if you didn't. 2 Take Me Outside $25 gift cards are available. And these come just in Canadian dollars. But you can get some lovely, all made in Canada, beautiful t-shirts and that. So here we go. Question. What are the 3 key themes of Take Me Outside Day? You need all 3 to win in one box. There's 3 themes. Kind of important. There's like different workshops and stuff happening each day around that theme.
It's Sophia, you were so fast. I don't know how you did it. It's amazing. Great job. You got it. It's Indigenous knowledge and perspectives. It is environmental education, climate change, and health and well-being is the 3rd one. Great job, Sophia. So, and I think I've got Kelsey's email so far for the winners, but if folks can try to send it over to the host and panelist chat setting, that'd be great. Otherwise, we'll try and look you up after, but we do appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And last question, $25 gift card to the Take Me Outside store again. What length of time is asked that you commit to taking your students outside for the Take Me Outside for Learning challenge? So this is a challenge. It's encouraging you to go out regularly. It's free to participate, but there are lots of goodies and prizes up for grabs if you do it. But we ask you to commit to a certain length of time. Do you see it, Steph?
I'm seeing people are saying 1 hour, but I mean, I think we're looking for the,
yeah, let's have the 1 hour what per year? Come on, we need a little more than that.
1 hour per week, Kathleen Farkas. Good job.
Nice
Yeah, 1 hour per week.
1 hour per week at least outside for learning. That's it. That's all. Not much to ask, is it? Okay. We are going to honor everyone's time. We're going to wrap it up. We're going to say thank you, Janice. Thank you, Megan. These learning spaces are an incredible community, and I'm so honored to get to host you for these. And Steph, for your work. Without you, none of this would be possible. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night. Gaysik Smeet.